Your fingers can sit in a bath for 10 minutes and come out looking like tiny raisins that have been assigned a task. Not just old, employed. Welcome back to Tidbits, because this tiny bathtub mystery is way less boring than skin getting soggy. Picture one doodle fingertip as a smooth little tire rolling politely into a puddle. Then, after soaking, it comes out with grooves. This is not your skin turning into a sad cracker. It is more like switching from dry road mode into wet tread mode. The boring explanation sounds so reasonable that it almost gets away with it. Skin touches water, skin absorbs water, skin wrinkles. Case closed. Except, no. If your hand were simply puffing up like a sponge, the whole thing should swell in a pretty even, marshmallowy way, which would be alarming and also hard to text with. Instead, after several minutes in water, especially warm water, the finger pads and toes do the dramatic part, while the back of your hand mostly sits there like it did not receive the memo. And that unevenness is the clue. The wrinkles appear as neat little ridges and valleys, then fade after you dry off, like a tiny topographic map that only shows up during bath time. Your finger pads are not just passively bloating, they are changing setting. Smooth, dry road fingertip goes into the puddle. Wrinkly, wet tread fingertip comes out looking ready to handle a slippery grape with unreasonable confidence. Here is where the little tire metaphor gets a pit crew. The wrinkling depends on your nervous system, specifically the automatic background wiring that handles things like blood vessel squeezing without asking your opinion first. When your fingers soak, sympathetic nerves tell small blood vessels in the fingertips to narrow. Those vessels constrict, the soft tissue under the skin loses a bit of volume, and the outer skin gets tugged into folds. So the weird part is almost backwards. The skin is not ballooning outward like a soaked paper towel. The inside is subtly tightening, and the surface buckles into tread marks. Somewhere in the sketchbook version of your body, a tiny pit crew is yanking a lever labelled wet grip, and your fingertips go from smooth scooter wheel to little rain tire. A dead simple bath wrinkle can tell doctors something about your nerves. That sounds fake, like diagnosing a car by dunking the windshield wipers in soup, but it is real enough to be useful. People with certain nerve damage may not wrinkle normally in the affected fingers, because the signal that tells those blood vessels to narrow is interrupted. That is why water wrinkling has been used as a rough check of autonomic nerve function in the hands. One doodle hand gets pit crew signal on and grows grooves, another hand gets signal off and stays smoother, less prepared for wet marble chaos. The wrinkle is not just decoration, it is evidence that the backstage wiring is still talking to the fingertip. Your pruny fingers might be tiny rain tires. Actual tires have tread because water is sneaky. It gets between rubber and road, and the grooves help channel it away from the contact patch. Fingertip wrinkles may do a similar job, creating miniature drainage channels so your skin can make better contact with wet objects instead of skating around on a microscopic puddle. In one experiment, people with wrinkled fingers moved wet marbles and small weights faster than people with smooth fingers, which is such a beautifully specific test. Not a sword, not a dramatic survival trial, wet marbles. The grip idea is useful and plausible, though scientists still debate exactly how much of an advantage it gives in everyday life. Bodies are like that. Very clever, then annoyingly hard to pin down. The trade-off is what makes the whole thing feel designed instead of random. If pruny grooves were always helpful, we would all have permanent raisin fingers, which would be deeply cursed. Imagine opening a bag of chips with built-in bath hands. No thank you. Temporary wrinkles may help in wet conditions without permanently messing with touch sensitivity or dry handling. And toes wrinkle too, which hints at an old practical problem. Wet rocks, slick river edges, damp grass, bodies trying not to fumble their way through a damp planet. Your body does not install snow chains forever. It waits until the road gets puddly, then pops on tiny rain tires at the ends of your hands and feet. So the next time your fingers come out of the bath all crinkled and suspicious, give them a little respect. That pruny fingertip is not a soggy accident. It is an active response, shaped by nerves, blood vessels, and maybe grip. A tiny tread pattern proudly holding a slippery object, like it just survived the world's smallest racetrack. And as those grooves dry back into smooth skin, as always, stay curious. If you have another everyday body glitch or small life mystery that suddenly feels suspicious, bring it to the sketchbook. That is exactly the kind of weird little thing we collect here.